So, of course, we have to have some weird name for a single variable. It's called a scalar. But you probably already know that because that's a math thing too. Vectors are a math thing. Matrices are a math thing. They're exactly the same in Matlab. So we've been using just a scalar variables to this point. We've had single values now. Now we're talking. We are going to use vectors. I'm going to put in my CLC here, and I'm going to put in a break here. There, and a CLC. All right. So there are a couple different ways to create a vector. One way is to name the variable. And just like we've done with the scalars, the single variables, we put in the numbers we want in our vector. The difference is we have more than one item. This variable name, my vector, is attached to these numbers now. The bracket encloses them. In other languages, this would be called an array. It's multiple values with one variable. So far, so good? Now, in a regular programming language, if we wanted to divide each of these elements by 3, we would have to loop through it and do this one, then do this one, then do this one, then do this one, then do this one. In Matlab, it does them all at the same time. And I did not print out the result vector, did I? Let's print that out. That's where Matlab really shines, is if you have lots and lots of data in a vector or a matrices, it does the operation on everything all at once. And there we are. 2 divided by 3 would be 0.666 and on down the line, but Matlab did them all simultaneously rather than one at a time. So this is called element-wise operations, meaning our operation is going to be on each element. This is an element, that's an element, that's an element, that's an element, that's an element. Not to be confused with elephant. So when you see in the notes, I mean, in my tutorials, it'll say element-wise addition. That means that we're adding or subtracting or multiplying by each of these elements. Now, one of the things that we're doing in our assignment for this week, let me find it. Course and work, we're creating a vector. Or is that next week? That might be next week. Yeah, it's next week we're creating a vector. Never mind, we're not creating a vector this week. All right, the next piece. We can use something called linspace, which I do not have in here apparently. What if we just need to make up a bunch of data that follows a pattern? We can use something called linspace. So my linspace equals, now the linspace is a function, which means it's pre-built code in Matlab that allows us to do something. And there's 3 parts to it. This is the beginning. So I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to go to no, that's the other way around. This is the step. And then I think this is the end. I'll find out in a second here. I did not make that clear in my directions, did I? Ooh, yeah, it's different when you talk about things. All right, we'll find out. So I have 9 items. I went from 0 to 9. So I just generated my stuff. And now I don't remember what the 1 means. Number of points optional. Okay, let me take a pause. I could look at my directions, or I could do a Google. Matlab, display single element of vector. I have the wrong syntax there. How do I display singular element? So it has different syntax. That's the problem with doing too many things. You forget which way to do it. So in most programming languages, it goes that way. Of course, Matlab has to do it this way. Most of the time you do brackets. All right, now it works. There. I have the first element. I can pull any of the elements by the index number. So every element in a vector, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can retrieve that element. There, 8. Does that make sense? We will do more work with how to retrieve parts of vectors. Now, the next thing we want to know is how do we do that with a matrix? A matrix has 2 dimensions. So how do you suppose we pull this element out? Remember, there's 2 dimensions. It's like we have vectors going this way, vectors going this way. So what do you think? Just make a guess. What do you think you might do? Pull that out. If we were only pulling one piece out, if we only wanted the first part of the first vector, we'd type in a 1. And notice it shows us. We say which row, which column. So we put a comma. So I can get the first row, second column, and that will pull out which number. What number from here will be pulled out by this notation? I'm accessing the first row, the second column. 2. Because this is the first row. It's also in the second column because we're doing 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional, sorry. Yes? Now, which element would I pull out if I did this? What number would come out of the matrix?
4.
Mm-hmm. And if I did this, what do you suppose would happen?
Error.
Error, yeah, because it doesn't exist. We'll see if Matlab. Yep. It exceeds the array bounds. So yeah, it's going to give an error. So we can access each element and do things with it, which we'll do more with that later on. Is everybody good? Questions on the assignment or anything? You can email me.